talk about a ketogenic diet and ketosis. Keto what? So, a ketogenic diet is basically a high-fat, low-carb diet. And what happens is when you deprive your body of carbohydrates, both complex and simple sugars, then you run out of glucose as your main energy source. Luckily, our cells are able to switch into this alternate metabolic pathway where we utilize ketone bodies, which are made and derived from fat. Now, why on earth would anyone do this? That's a great question. I ask myself that very often. So a ketogenic diet has been found to be amazingly therapeutic for a variety of conditions. They've even prescribed it as a treatment for certain things like epilepsy and cancer. So what happens when your body makes this metabolic shift and starts using ketones instead of glucose? Well, there's a few things. So first, going into ketosis and depriving your body of glucose will activate certain pathways that will induce something called autophagy, which basically is your body saying, okay, cool, we're gonna clean up the kitchen a little bit. So when you go through autophagy, basically your body is going through your cells and munching up and cleaning up any sort of debris or damaged cell structures. Perhaps there's damaged mitochondria or bits of endoplasmic reticulum that is not faring as well. And so it basically goes in and just like scrubs up everything and cleans it up so everything is moving much more smoothly. It's kind of like getting an oil change for your body. So it's good for upregulating the immune system. Also, if you have any sort of like a cold or a virus or any infection, your intuition is kind of to like not eat, right? So ketosis really mimics this fasting state and a lot of the benefits that we see for the immune system and for inflammation by fasting. So it also, these ketones have epigenetic interactions with specific genes. So I think we've found so far there's, I think, just 1,500 genes specifically related to the immune system and inflammatory pathways that are found to be influenced directly by ketone bodies binding and changing the transcription of these genes. So for that reason, a lot of people with chronic illnesses or autoimmune conditions or even cancer, as I mentioned earlier, are doing this ketogenic diet because it just kind of resets the immune system, resets inflammation, and reduces a lot of the pain and dysfunction that people are experiencing with these type of chronic conditions. Another cool thing about it is it starves out things like bacteria, yeast, or cancer cells. So bacteria and fungi and cancer, they love sugar. They eat sugar, and that's one of the reasons you're supposed to avoid sugar, is because they thrive off sugar. So what happens when you stop eating sugar and you're metabolizing ketones? Well, they die, because those cells or those organisms, they can't just flip the switch and eat fat like our human cells can. So if you have a chronic infection, for example, Lyme disease is a great example of one application of a ketogenic diet, and I believe Tim Ferriss utilized a ketogenic diet along his recovery from Lyme disease as well, and I certainly have, being a Lyme survivor. I was on a ketogenic diet for about 1.5 years. So it's this amazing tool to starve out these infectious organisms or cancerous or tumor cells. So the thing about the ketogenic diet is it's really hard because you basically can't go out anywhere. You can't eat socially. So it can feel a little bit isolating unless you find your keto friends to hang out with and you guys can make keto meals together. But for the most part, you're predominantly eating massive amounts of vegetables, fats, and meats. It's very difficult to be vegan and ketogenic because there's not a lot of options as far as like protein that vegans can eat. And also, you're not supposed to eat a tremendous amount of protein because amino acids can actually be broken down and affect insulin in the bloodstream. So really, we're trying to, get the insulin to chill out and kind of reset, because a lot of people will develop metabolic issues or insulin resistance living in this modern world where sugar and food and processed things are abundant and everywhere that you look. Another population of people that really enjoy the ketogenic diet are people that are really into endurance and athletic enhancement. So when you're in ketosis, some people report increased endurance, ability to handle the altitude. They can run longer. They can just up their performance athletically. And we've seen this with certain marathon runners that are in ketosis, and they do quite well. So you kind of get like the performance people, like these bulletproof coffee type individuals, and then you get people like me that are chronically ill, just desperately trying to feel okay. So I found that those populations are the ones that gravitate the most towards the ketogenic diet. There also are ways of measuring and testing ketones. You can buy devices that will prick your finger and use blood for a more accurate representation of what your blood glucose is and what your ketone levels are at. There are some pee strips as well, though they're not as accurate and they can be quite expensive. And then there's these things called exogenous ketones, which are basically ketones in a supplement, and some people will use them to either strengthen the amount of ketosis that they're in, or to help them switch that metabolic pathway faster. If you have a cheat day and you like eat some cake or whatever because it's a party, and then the next day you want to go back into ketosis, some people will utilize the exogenous ketone supplements like beta-hydroxybutyrate to help flip that switch. However, there is some controversy about the exogenous ketones and whether they actually disrupt your ability to go into what's called nutritional ketosis, which is more like a natural ketosis. Ketosis takes about 72 hours from the elimination of the carbohydrates in the beginning until you're really in ketosis. And that first couple of days can be rough. You can feel really hungry because you haven't quite switched all over to the fat bodies, and your body is still desperately trying to run off sugar. And so people can feel what's called like a keto flu, where they're like detoxing and their chemistry is just shifting quite radically. The great thing though is that the more that you oscillate back and forth in and out of keto, and the longer you do it and the more practice you do, the faster your body can remember and just make that switch. So when you've been kind of going in and out of ketosis for like a year or so, your body just jumps right into it generally quicker than someone that's starting ketosis for the first time in their whole life. So really, the beauty of ketosis, in my opinion, is actually strengthening the body's ability to be flexible in switching its metabolic pathways. And this is something that you would see in like a Paleolithic man, where it's winter time, there's nothing to eat except, meat and like, seal fat or whatever, and you don't really have access to fresh fruits. And then spring comes and you gorge on fruits, and then you put on a bunch of weight and just like eat as much as you can, and then you switch back into ketosis when you have to walk for 3 days to find something to eat. So it's probably something that our ancestors experienced quite a bit in their hunter-gatherer sort of lifestyle. And to be honest, while I think the ketogenic diet is an incredible therapeutic invention and perhaps a performance-enhancing tool for people, I don't personally think that it's ideal for everybody to be in ketosis for long periods of time. Some people like to be in ketosis and stay in ketosis. I am not one of those people. Like I said earlier, I was on a ketogenic diet for about a year and a half as I was recovering from these debilitating chronic infections like Lyme disease and Klebsiella and all these other issues I was going through. And then once I started to feel better and get healthier and I was able to tolerate carbohydrates and other foods and my blood sugar had normalized a lot better, since then I just kind of oscillate in and out of ketosis every once in a while as a reset, and I generally just eat like slower carbs where there's more fiber, so it's not quite a shot to my blood sugar. So things like that are like whole grain or like quinoa or sweet potato, or fruit in moderation, especially with fats combined like coconut cream or something like that. So by me sharing that, I'm certainly not trying to push you to or away from a ketogenic diet. Just want to share information. And yeah, my personal belief is that doing a ketogenic diet and then oscillating back and forth is a really great way to maintain your body's adaptability and resilience in just making use of what is available in those Paleolithic food supply. But as we know now, that's not so hard to find food. However, our biology has not really changed that much since those more ancestral times. So the keto diet is a great way to sort of hack into this primal and paleo way of nurturing our current physical bodies in their state. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe to our Entheozen Explorer channel if you love to nerd out and hear about all these cool ways of biohacking and optimizing your life. We hope you enjoyed this, and we will see you next time.